So I'd like to welcome everyone. My name is Sue McNeil. I'm a visiting professor fellow at University of New South Wales and an emeritus professor at University of Delaware. This session on BTR is Transportation of the Future and Embracing Sustainability. So we have 5 really interesting presentations today. What I'm going to do is ask each of the presenters to briefly introduce themselves, speak for about 20 minutes, and that will give us a little time for questions and answers. If you could type questions and comments in the chat as we go along, we'll follow up as we move along. Yikang is going to deal with the technical issues, which is awesome. This session is being recorded, so we have access to it. So what I'd like to do is call on Yuhao Louis to speak about temporal equilibrium for electrified ride sourcing markets, considering charging capacity and driving fatigue. So I'm going to hand over. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let me share my screen. Can you see my screen now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Yuhao. I'm a PhD student at NYU Shanghai. And today my presentation is titled Temporal Equilibrium for Electrified Ride Sourcing Markets Considering Charging Capacity Constraint and Driving Fatigue. This is a joint work with my advisor, Professor Jibin Chen from NYU Shanghai, and also Professor Chu Xie from Tongji University and Professor Kai Liu from Dalian University of Technology. So the background of this study is vehicle electrification, which is a very essential step to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And because ride sourcing vehicles have a much significantly longer daily mileage than private cars, so electrified ride sourcing vehicles could have more benefits in terms of carbon reduction. So this has been progressing in many major cities around the world. So the specific problem we're looking at would be, under this background, how will driver adapt their choice of work schedule if the market is electrified? First of all, driver will respond to the time-dependent demand or time-varying revenue. This is the same for both gasoline vehicle drivers and electric vehicle drivers. But what is different is that EV drivers have to arrange time to recharge their vehicles because EV has a significantly longer recharging time compared with gasoline vehicle or GV. So they have to arrange time to do that. But there could be limited charging opportunities. If every driver tries to work during the high revenue period and goes to recharge during a low revenue period, there may not be enough charging facilities to accommodate such a huge group of drivers. So they have to make a trade-off between when to work and when to recharge. And the final factor that may affect drivers' choice of work schedule is the driving fatigue or the need for resting. Because ride sourcing drivers are professional drivers, they can't just work a whole day long. They have to arrange time to take a rest. But what makes this subtle is that for EV drivers, they can use the charging time. When the vehicle is charging, the EV drivers can also take a rest. So this is a bit subtle. So we would like to study this problem. And regarding the literature, there have been many studies on electrified ride sourcing system in terms of different aspects. There are also many studies working on modeling the temporal driver supply or the choice of work schedule for drivers for different types of ride-hailing systems. But these studies either did not consider the hard constraint on charging capacity, or they did not consider the effect of driving fatigue. And also the solution of their model will give rise to a non-additive shortest path subproblem. They did not provide an efficient algorithm to solve that with global optimality guarantee. So in this paper, we want to fill these gaps. So the overall model is built upon this time expanded network. This is a time network. This is not a row network, this is a time network. So we have three types of vertical links: the work links, rest link, and the charging links. So each vertical link means the consumption of a period of time. For example, if a driver chooses to traverse this link, it means that from 1 a.m. to 2 a.m., the driver chooses to work. It's the same for the rest and recharge. So with this network, a path connecting O from D corresponds to a work schedule for ride sourcing drivers. So it will, a path will specify when the driver chooses to work, when the driver chooses to rest, and to recharge. So we can transfer the schedule choice problem to a path choice problem on this network. So accordingly, we have the feasible path set for GV and EV drivers. EV drivers are grouped by their initial state of charge, because different initial state of charge will give rise to different feasible path sets, because they have to recharge so that the SOC do not run below 0. And the SOC dynamic can also be specified on this network. When it works, it consumes SOC, and when it passes through a charging lane, it will recharge the vehicle. And also the charging lanes are capacitated, so that the flow on that lane cannot be exceed a certain value. And the path choice rule would be profit maximization. This is reasonable for professional drivers. So to measure the profits, we first developed the model to derive the revenue for drivers. So to derive the revenue, we have to first describe the demand side market. The demand side market can be captured by 4 components. The first one is the elastic demand, which is elastic in terms of the waiting time. And the waiting time depends on the vacant vehicles. And the sum of vacant vehicles and occupied vehicles equals the total driver supply, which is an exogenous input for this demand side market equilibrium. And the occupied vehicle depends on the demand. So this is an endogenous system, and it can uniquely determine the demand side equilibrium. So with this system, we can determine the demand side equilibrium. Once we know how the demand side react to a certain driver supply, we can derive the revenue in terms of the driver supply, which is a decreasing function in terms of driver supply. And then, so we have the revenue, and then we consider the cost. The driver's cost consists of 2 components. The first one is the lane-based cost, and the second one is the path-based cost. And also drivers are classified by their preferences. For example, some drivers may prefer to work during the daytime, some may prefer to work during night. So we can classify that by specifying different costs. And the link-based costs are attributed to each link to represent these physical meanings. For example, the energy consumption cost or the opportunity cost when they take a rest. And there also a path-based component, which is used to reflect the mounting this utility from long and continuous working. In literature, this component is captured by this function, which this function increase more than linearly in terms of the cumulative work hours. Because if you work longer, you have less time to engage other activities. So this is the physical meaning of this cost. But our formulation consider not only the cumulative work hours, but also the consecutive work hours in the continuous work segments. So for example, this is a work schedule. It has 2 continuous work segments. Yeah, and this term represents the fatigue cost. So for these 2 segments, the fatigue will accumulate independently, respectively. So they're not continuous accumulating the fatigue. When they take a rest or go to charge, the accumulating rate will reset to 0. So this is a general case and compare with what we know in the literature. And also compare these 2 work schedule. The formulation in the literature cannot distinguish these 2 segments because both of them have the same number of cumulative work hours. But in our formulation, the drivers will prefer the first one unless the second one had a much higher revenue because the first one had a better work-rest balance. So when we capture the revenue and cost, we can develop the overall model, which appears like in this way. It's a convex program formulation. If we introduce some Lagrangian multipliers to this constraint, we can derive the KKT condition, which turns out to correspond to a market equilibrium. It captures the flow profit complementarity, the market clearing, and also respect the capacity constraint. So we have a model that captures the overall equilibrium. And there's two challenges for when we try to solve this problem. The first one is the path-based cost, which prohibit the use of many link-based methods. And the other one is the implicit revenue function. So we cannot solve the convex program directly. So what we propose to do is to solve the KKT condition directly using the gap function-based method. The gap function of our model looks like this, and it can be proved that when we minimize this gap function until it equals 0, the minimizer will solve the NCP exactly. So it will solve the KKT condition, which means it gives a solution to the convex program. So we get the equilibrium. So the process of equilibration is equivalent to minimize an unconstrained gap function. So the gap function method, it's a path-based method, which means that we have to enumerate the paths before we do that. To avoid enumeration, we integrate the method with a column generation scheme. So we will add a path to the paths that were never necessary. So the subroutine of the column generation is a non-additive shortest path problem. And this problem has a few challenges. First of all, the path flexibility depends on the combination of work and charting links. And also the path-based cost. Our new formulation also brings some challenge. Specifically for this term, we have existing algorithm to address, but for the fatigue cost, we have no existing algorithm to deal with such type of path cost. So we have to design a new algorithm to solve that. We design a new multi-objective label correcting algorithm. We design the label we use. We use different elements to record different information of a subpath. For example, the label at node I will record the information from O to I, and then we try to find it, visit its successor. For example, visit J, we generate a new label, and we first check if this label is visible. If it's not visible, we do not keep this label. And then we check if this label, if these two label, any of these two labels are dominated, we only keep the non-dominated labels, and so on and so forth until we find the optimal label at the destination. So with this algorithm, we can prove that this labeling algorithm can find a globally optimal path. But this algorithm is not efficient at all. So we propose 4 different speed-up techniques. The first one is proposed based on the observation that the optimal path should not contain too many root links. So we derive the upper bound of the number of root links for the optimal for any optimal paths using 2 different approaches, and we can only consider the acceptable path, which consider no more than the upper bound number of root links. And then the second speed up technique is we propose a new dominance criteria. The traditional dominance criteria is too strict, so it cannot help us to cut the solution space efficiently. So we propose a much looser dominance criteria that it can guarantee global optimality. And it turns out that to check this dominance criteria, it's very efficient. It's of O1 complexity. And the third technique is the loop exclusion, because shortest path should not contain loop between the transition links, using the transition links. So we exclude this type of visits. And the fourth technique is called charging time regulation. It's because shortest path should not contain unnecessary charging link. So whenever whenever a label has enough SOC to generate any acceptable path, we restrain from visiting any charging links. So with this, we can reduce the computational time. So the numerical example is developed based on this network. A day is divided into 24 periods, and this is the passenger demand, potential demand pattern. And we have 6 types of drivers. Some prefer to work longer, some prefer to work shorter. And we have GB driver and also EV drivers with different initial SOC. And we find that at equilibrium, the realized demand and the driver supply are dictated by the potential demand. And in general, the resting and charging happen at the off-peak hours with low revenue, but we also capture some drivers to rest or recharge during the peak hours. So the model can capture the diversity of the choices of work schedule. And these are the schedule choice for the 6 type of drivers. And we can find that EV drivers are more willing to work longer than GB drivers because electricity is cheaper than gasoline. So the work cost, the cost for EV driver will be lower than GB driver. So they are willing to work longer. And the second one, we find some EV drivers would choose a less profitable path to bypass their competition for chargers. So it captures the trade-off, what we mentioned at the very beginning, the trade-off between when to work and when to charge. And we also find that our model captures the queuing delay due to limited charging opportunity because we found some drivers will first take a rest at the, and then to recharge, instead of a first recharge and then rest, because when they take a rest, we find that the charging opportunities are fully occupied. So they have to take a rest and then wait for the next period to recharge. This is the queuing. And we also test the algorithm performance for our proposed techniques. So it turns out that the most important techniques are the consistent dominance and loop exclusion, because if we take off any of this, we cannot get a solution within 2 hours. And if we use all the techniques, the computational time will reduce to a pretty favorable level. And we also conduct many sensitivity analysis. In this 4 figure, we can we examine the effect of the driving fatigue. So the intensity of the driving fatigue, which is measured by the parameter gamma. So if the driving fatigue, if driving fatigue is more prominent, driver will tend to take more rest, pretty intuitive, and work for less hours. And then because when the driving fatigue, the effect of driving fatigue increases, drivers are less willing to work longer. So the platform commission will decrease because there are fewer drivers in the market. So they collect fewer commission. And for the driver benefits, it can be shown that the average hourly revenue, driver revenue will increases because when there are fewer drivers working, their competition among drivers will reduces. But the profit is not monotonic because as the effect of driving fatigue increases, the driver cost will also increase. So when you have an increasing revenue and increasing cost, the profit is not necessarily monotonic. And when the final graph, when the driving fatigue is not considered, which means that the drivers are solely driven by profits. So they do not consider the driver, they do not have the driving fatigue issues. So what they do is to work during the high revenue period and to charge during the low revenue period. So the competition for charges will be higher when the driving fatigue is not considered. So, and also we
could you also work on wrapping up, please?
Okay.
That's borrowed time. Thanks.
Yeah, this is the final slide. Okay.
Okay.
So when we increase the charging capacity, the competition for charging will decreases, and more drivers will be able to work longer. So the platform commission will increase, but the profit is decreasing because the competition among drivers increases because more drivers are going into the market. So this is the end of this presentation, and it has been published at TR+C. So if you're interested in any details in this paper, you can check this out. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So if anyone has a quick question, if you could put it into the chat, but I actually have a question, given no one else has put anything in the chat, is you have a lot of interesting insights that you got from this analysis. Who would you actually expect to use it? Would you expect the drivers to use it?
For example, regarding the insight regarding the charging capacity, I think this is pretty. I think the governments would be interested in this to provide how many charging facility, how many charging opportunity to the public ride-hailing drivers, because this will moderate the market equilibrium, and also I think the ride-hailing platform may be interested in what we found here. Yeah, because it's related to their commission.
So I think there's an interesting question about how do you get that information out, right?
Yeah,
because this is not a set of users that would typically read this literature. Right. So there's an interesting set of questions of yes, you've given us some really interesting insights, and how do we actually use that? So anyway, thank you for a fascinating presentation, some lovely graphics, and please, if anyone else has questions, add them to the chat, because we can always answer them in the chat as we go along. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank
you.
You.
I'd like to move on to the next one. We actually have the second person who's going to do the presentation. Yanling Deng is going to talk about network equilibrium of battery electric vehicles, considering drivers' resting behavior. So I think we might have a complementary set of presentations going on here. So Yanling?
Yes.
Thank you. Please, you should be able to share your screen.
Okay.
So Yikan, can you unshare? And do you have Yanling as
sorry.
Yeah, I think it works.
All right.
Great.
Excellent. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. I will share again. Okay. Oh.
Doesn't want to share? Because we did see it briefly.
Yeah, I think she just shared the screen for a short time.
Yeah, but sorry. Wait a minute. Oh my God.
Deep breath. It's all okay. We'll get there.
I can't open it now. Yeah.
Just while we're waiting for you to share the scene, Kara added some stuff to the chat about some papers about Americans willing to allow the control of these partners. So that might be worth looking at. I'm interested in that.
I'm sorry, but I can't open my slides now because I used the PDF, and it has some problem to.
Could you like send me your PDF document that I can play it for you if you want.
Okay. How can I send you?
I can typed in the chat box about my email. Hi, Professor Su. How about we move to the third one? And
third
then
one. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes,
okay.
let's do
Yeah.
that, and then we'll sort
thank
this
you.
out as we're going along. So,
Sorry.
hey,
let
are you
me set Hey as the co-host. Wait.
Right.
Yeah. Qiande, now you can unmute yourself.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
So, hey, all right,
Okay.
are you able to share your screen? So, hey, along with his co-author, is going to present a modified genetic algorithm for solving the bus route design, express bus service design, and frequency setting problem. So, I'll let you proceed.
Okay,
Thank
let
you.
me try to share the screen. Okay, can you
Excellent.
see the
Yes.
slide?
Very good. Thank you. Please go ahead. You have about 20 minutes.
Okay. Okay, hello everyone. I'm He Qiande from the University of Hong Kong. Today I'm very happy to be here to introduce my research project. Modified genetic algorithm for solving the bus route design, express service design, and the frequency setting problem. Nowadays, long commuting time is a common problem in large cities, which reduce the satisfaction of the citizens. Express service or limited stop bus service is a potential solution to this problem, as express bus skips a series of bus stops and may use a faster path. The travel time can be significantly reduced. Moreover, due to the shorter circulation time, the express bus can provide a higher frequency with a limited fleet size, and it also reduces the average waiting time. So with proper design, express service can bring a lot of benefits. We have reviewed the literature related to the express bus service design. You can see that the scale of them is usually small, such as a single bus corridor or a trunk line network. Moreover, all of these researchers use predefined local routes. So in their researches, the local routes are not allowed to be changed. So based to our best knowledge, our research is first to consider the local road design and the express service design at the same time. Besides, we also consider deadhead as a strategy to avoid overload. The main contribution of these studies are as follows. First, we propose a model to simultaneously consider the transit route design, express service design, and the frequency setting problem, with considering the capacity and the deadhead strategy. Second, we develop a modified genetic algorithm to solve the model. And thirdly, we examine the property of the problem and the performance of the algorithm through some experiments. Before we move on to the formulation part, let me first introduce the definition of the local route and the express route in our study. The local routes have to serve every passing bus stop, and no stops is allowed to be skipped. And besides, in the network, we construct some express links such as the highway or elevated roads, and the local roads are not allowed to use these express links. Each local roads we have at most one corresponding express roads. Every stop served by an express roads should also be served by the corresponding local roads. And of course, the express roads are allowed to use the express links in the network. The objective of our study is to minimize the total social cost, which is the weighted sum of the passengers' travel time and the number of transfers, and also the cost of the bus operator. And this is subject to many constraints, including the relationship between the local and express roads, the max number of intermediate bus stop, the subtotal elimination, the maximum trip time of each road, minimum frequency, limited the fleet size, and the no overload is allowed. We aim to solve the bus route design, express service design, and the frequency system problem at the same stage. This is a very complex problem. General transit network problem without considering the frequency is already NP-hard. Thus, our integrated problem is also NP-hard. A heuristic or a meta heuristic is required to get the solution in reasonable time. And in this study, we propose a modified genetic algorithm or GA. So let me introduce the general scheme of our modified GA. So we use GA to determine the local road design and the express service design. And a capacitive frequency setting algorithm is inserted into the GA to solve the optimal frequency setting for each GA solution. We first initialize several GA solutions and optimize their frequency. Then we use several crossover and mutation operators to generate the offsprings. We totally propose 2 crossover operators and 7 mutation operators here, but due to the time limit, I will not explore them. And after that, we have the stop sequence improvement heuristic and the repair operator to improve the quality of the offspring solutions. And after that, we need to optimize the frequency for the offspring solutions. Finally, we will apply a niching technique in the survival selection to maintain the diversity of the solutions. An offspring solution will only replace its parent if it is better than that parent. The process of these steps will repeat for many times until the final solution is good enough, and then we will output the best solution. The capacity frequency setting algorithm is very essential in this algorithm in the GA, as we need to calculate the frequency for each GA solution. The main function of this algorithm is to allocate the fleet to each route and divide them into deadhead buses and non-deadhead buses. The deadhead buses will only serve the high demand direction to improve the frequency in that direction. A loop here is constructed to avoid any overload situation. If some buses are overloaded, we have 3 operators to deal with. The first trial is to move buses from underloaded buses to overloaded buses. And and another 2 is to add more deadhead buses and shorten the routes and disable some routes. To avoid endless looping, this algorithm will terminate after 10 iterations, and after that, a penalty will be given. And because we have a special constraint in our studies that the local routes are not allowed to skip any passing bus stop, thus we design a waypoint maximum to ensure this constraint is not violated. So in a GA solution, we will contain the sequence of waypoints instead of the sequence of bus stops. And after we have the sequence of waypoints, we will insert the stops along the shortest path between two adjacent waypoints into that local routes. Use such mechanism, we can ensure that the final local route will not skip any bus stop. In all the operators in the GA will work on the waypoints of the local routes. And for the express routes, we will directly use the stop sequence in the in a GA solution. Now let me move on to the experiment part. Here is the bus study bus network. There are total 80 bus nodes with 13 terminals and 1 bus interchange at the node 29. Okay, sorry. The straight lines represent the local links, and the curved lines are the express links that the local routes are not allowed to use. And we use C++ to program our modified GA and get the output when the objective value do not change for 2000 generations. We have compared the output solution by the modified GA for 3 approaches with different maximum number of local routes. First, we only consider the local route design, and we have the best object value of 8 to 86. When we add the express service design at the output local routes, we will have a smaller objective value at 781. However, if we design the local route and the express route at the same stage, the objective value dropped to 7701. Thus, we can see that the simultaneous approach can obtain the best solution among the 3 approaches. One important difference between the simultaneous approach and the sequential approach is that 57 buses are allocated to express routes in the sequential approach, while 10 more buses are located to the express service in the simultaneous design. This shows that the express service by the simultaneous design is more attractive. In addition, we noted that there is a difference between the optimal number of local routes with and without the express service design. The benefit of adding express service based on an optimized 12 road local road network will be minimal. Thus, we suggest that when adding express service to an existing local transit system, the local road should be also designed at the same stage. We have also tested the effect of some parameters. We use the minimum frequency here, for example. We can see that if the minimum frequency constraint increases, the number of available routes and the average waiting time drops, while the waiting connecting time and the passengers needing transfers increases, such the frequency constraint should be carefully determined based on the trade-off between the waiting time and the transfer. So here we summarize our presentation. First, we propose a model to formulate the transfer route design, express service design, and the frequency setting problem with the capacity constraint and the deadhead strategy. Second, a modified genetic algorithm was developed to solve the model. Specific operators was designed for the problem. And the experiments show that introducing express service can significantly reduce the total social cost. In addition, the simultaneous approach to design the local routes and the express service can output a better solution than optimizing the express service based on a predefined local route network. This is all of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. So some interesting, again, insights into this and an interesting way of formulating it. If anyone has other questions, please note them in the chat. As I say to my students, if you want to save your friends from my questions, you should ask them questions yourself. But in the end, I would like to just ask a question. So did you consider other solution techniques other than the genetic algorithm?
At this current stage, we didn't use other algorithm.
Okay.
Yeah, but we also consider artificial bee colony algorithm for to work.
Right. And do you have any sense of what that how that might differ, or do you think that GA is more computationally efficient?
I think GA is really good enough for this kind of problem, as GA as the express service use a lot of binary variables.
Okay. And then another question is, how sensitive do you think this is to the specific network? So you had quite an elaborate network, but it seemed to have one of the things about the network is it seemed to have relatively few hub and spoke type operations compared with many other networks. You have multiple terminals.
Yeah, the current drawback is that we only have one interchange node.
Right.
Yeah, and we plan to explore the network to other kind of networks.
Okay, so it'll be interesting to see those results. Excellent. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the presentation and thank you for stepping up and going forward. And we'll step back now and go to our second presentation. So hopefully we've actually solved the problem, and Yanling Deng is going to present on the network equilibrium of battery electric charging vehicles again. And so hopefully we have better luck at sharing the presentation.
Yes, I'm ready. Sorry for the problem.
No, not your problem.
Yeah, I will share my screen. So can you see my slide?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay.
So if you could briefly introduce yourself, that would be wonderful.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So I'm Yanling Deng, and today I'm going to present this paper on behalf of Professor Zhibing Chen, and this is a joint work with these authors, and so let's begin. And so the title is Network Equilibrium of Battery Electric Vehicles, Considering driver's resting behavior. And this is the outline of my slide. And first, I want to introduce the EV developments and obstacles. We can see that in recent years, the EV sales saw some records despite supply chain disruptions and some high energy prices. And however, there's still some obstacles facing EV adopters. And an important reason is the shortage of charging infrastructures. We can see from these figures, and so this is the obstacles of EVs. And for the EV literatures, we can see a tremendous number of studies have been devoted to the optimal deployment plan of various types of charging infrastructures. And most of these papers do not capture the interactions between EV drivers' travel behavior, such as the route choices and recharging location choices. And if we want to describe the equilibrium condition, EV drivers are generally presumed to determine when and where to charge, so as to incorporate the spontaneous reaction of EV drivers to various deployment plans. And but in the above literatures, none of the travel cost functions have considered the impact of driving fatigue and taking breaks in the equilibrium. So we can see the research gaps. The first is that the charging behavior generally synchronized with drivers' resting behavior can contribute to the mitigation of drivers' fatigue. And if we overlook the fatigue impact on the travel cost, it may overestimate the side effects of the on-road charging behavior, because charging behavior and resting behavior can be synchronized. And in this way, we need to incorporate EV drivers' resting behavior into the travel plan. So in our consideration, we want to capture the fatigue impact, and then we consider that an EV driver's travel plan should dictate not only the routing and resting plans, but also the routing and recharging plans, but also the resting plan. So the routing plan specifies the paths, charging stations, and the rest stops to use. And recharge plan, it's about the amount of electricity to recharge at each adopted charging station. And the resting plan, it indicates the rest time at each adopted charging stations and the rest stop. And in reality, we can see that charging stations are usually deployed at locations where EV drivers can take break. So they also consider consider rest stops. We can see toll network. So when EV drivers travel between the origins and the destinations, drivers decide the travel plans to minimize the individual travel costs, which is composed of driving time, break time, charging costs, and fatigue costs. We can see some trade-off among the travel costs in this toll network. If a driver chooses path 1-3, the cost is 65.6. But if he chooses a longer path 1-3, the cost can be less than that of path 1-3. So we can see that additional on-road charging time can relieve driving fatigue and thus reduce the travel costs. So in our formulation, we have some assumptions, and the important one is that we reckon that a break is effective if its duration is no less than a predetermined threshold. We can make some assumptions about this value, and in our model, we think it is 20 minutes. And we have some complex state notations. So I may skip here, but I want to say that we have the set definition about the utilized charging stations and the set of rest-only stops with effective breaks, and the union of these two sites are the set of charging rest stops with effective breaks. These three sites can be important in our formulation, and so we define the objective of the problem for a EV driver adopting a routing plan. His or her utility or travel cost is calculated at this one, which is composed of the driving time cost, the break time cost, charging cost, and fatigue cost. We can give a definition that routing plan is usable for EV if the EV is able to complete it with or without recharging. And we can see that the usability of a routing plan is flow dependent. So in the formation, we can first give the formation of an recharging and rest time problem. In this problem, the optimal recharging and resting plan for a driver adopting routing plan can be obtained by solving this problem. So the objective is just is the distributivity of the EV driver, and the constraint include the battery conservation, the upper and the lower bounds of the SOC, effective rest time constraint, and rest time can be no less than the charging delay. Yes, we consider charging delay also in this problem, and so we can see the RT problem is a linear problem for each usable routing plan. And its optimal solution can be easily found in its optimality conditions. So we can give definition that at equilibrium, all adaptive travel plans are usable in terms of their routing plan. And the travel cost of adaptive travel plans for a vehicle between an OD pair are the same, but less than or equal to that of any adopted usable travel plan for the same vehicle class. And mathematically, we can define the network equilibrium conditions by its optimality conditions. Yeah, it's the KKT conditions. And so we can also obtain the network equilibrium conditions. I will quick skip it. And so we can now find the equivalent VI to the network equilibrium conditions. As shown in this one, it can be some complex, and it can be validated that the VI is equivalent to the NE conditions, and its optimality conditions are exactly the same as the NE conditions. So now we want to solve this VI formulation. And the core idea is to minimize the gap between the prime and the dual problem associated with the VI and subject to the constraints from the prime and dual problem. And the optimal solution to this nonlinear programming solves the VI if the gap becomes 0. So this is a formulation for the nonlinear programming, and now we want to solve this problem. So it can be time consuming to enumerate all the usable plans. We want so in this way we adopt the column generation procedure to generate only the necessary usable travel plan for the solution. We can see this flowchart, and so we first saw a restricted version of the NLP for flow and charging demand assignment, and then find search pies and find a usable plan. If it's a new plan, we add to the subset of usable plan. And finally, we can get the equilibrium solution. We can see in the step 3, given the travel flow and the charging demand obtained from solving the restricted NE-NLP, the subproblem can be formulated as this one. Now we want to solve this subproblem, and it is also a complex problem, and we can it's an MI-NLP, and but the objective is unique because relaxed MI-NLP starting from this is the I will skip it, and so below we present a Bender's decomposition algorithm to solve it. So we first initialize. I think the most important one is we first fix the integer variable, and then we solve the continuous nonlinear programming subproblem, and then we can check the we can obtain the mass problem and then solve it, and we check the convergence to finally solve this problem. I think the algorithm is is complex, and to save time, I will skip it, and let's see the results. So first, we used the neural network to test this formulation, and we can see we define the rest only stops and the charging rest stops, and in this network we can I want to say that for the fatigue cost function, we define this one, and we can also change the parameter of these values, and in this network we can easily obtain the travel plans for each OD pair under the equilibrium flow pattern. We can see that every travel plan consists of at least one effective rest stops with or without charging facilities, and the rest time, the break time at each rest only stop always equals the effective break time threshold, which is 20 minutes. And for break time, it may not be equivalent to the break time threshold. For break time at charging rest stops, it may not be equivalent, and it will be subject to the either the driver's resting needs or the charging needs. Otherwise, the battery energy may be exhausted during the trip. So this is driving time. How the traveling time change with the travel time, and so we can see the cumulative. We can obtain the cumulative fatigue cost, which increase with the travel time. And okay, so this is the equilibrium link flows under two different cases with or without fatigue cost conditions. We can see the results can be very different. And okay, we can also obtain the utilized prices on the equilibrium, and we can see, considering the fatigue cost, at least one price passing through both rest stops will be adopted for each OD pair. And without considering the fatigue cost, all the utilized prices include owning the charging rest stops or the rest only stops, or neither. We also do some sensitivity analysis, and I think I will skip this. Also, we test our model in a large-scale real-world network, Yangtze real data network. So in this network, it comprises 38 nodes and 138 directed links for this real-world network. we can see the results that taking into account the fatigue effect will increase the break time cost, since the drivers will have more incentive to take a break. And yet the fatigue cost has been reduced nearly by half. And some drivers tend to make detours to visit rest stops, which augments the driving cost. And for the comparison of components of total charging demand at charging rest stops between equilibrium conditions with and without fatigue cost, we can obtain the conclusion that the fatigue cost will bring about a tremendous effect on drivers' travel plans, emphasizing the urgent need to take it into account in the modeling process. And so finally is the takeaways regarding the driver fatigue as part of the driver cost will result in totally different travel plans adopted by EV drivers, and thus yet distinct flow and charging demand distributions across the transportation network. And we can see a medium-sized battery could be more cost-effective than a large-sized one. And DC fast chargers with very high charging powers may not necessarily improve the system performance in terms of reducing EV drivers' travel cost. Okay, thank you. And this is our paper. And if you're interested, you can check it out in the network. Yeah.
Thank you. Again, lots of interesting analysis. Your key takeaways at the end were particularly interesting in the medium battery sized and the idea of the fast chargers of how the role that they play in there. So this goes back to my earlier question about who can respond, but it also seemed that if a driver had an app, they could find at any point in time of saying, should I take a rest now? Should I charge now? Given the situation. And so that's a kind of cool little app for drivers. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
But there's a lot of analysis behind that. The other question I went to ask is, you skipped over what your fatigue function was, but where did that come from?
So in our formulation, we only define a function that satisfies the property of increase with the travel time and convex. So for the problem.
But I think you had two parameters on it.
Yeah. I think. Okay.
Sorry, I should have actually noted the slide number.
Yeah, this one.
Yes. So when you did the sensitivity analysis that you skipped over, did you do any sensitivity on those parameters?
Yes.
Okay.
I did.
And
I think it's maybe the. Oh, sorry, I didn't present the sensitivity of the parameter of fatigue functions in this slide, but we did it in our paper. And because for the fatigue function, we have no real world data and even no references. Yeah. So yeah.
So that's an interesting area for someone else to do lots of research on.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Thank you. All right. Well, again, I'd like to encourage other people to answer questions, but thank you, Yanling, and also for sorting this out. So I'd like to move to the fourth presentation. So Mohammed Babaei from University of Alberta is going to take over now, and appreciate it if you could actually use your camera, because it's nice to see people's faces, if that's possible. And I'm going to pass
it over to you. I would share my camera. I'm just really worried about my internet connection. I might not be able to.
Okay. So if you're concerned, maybe don't. Maybe just at the end, put it on briefly. So if you could share your presentation.
Can everyone see my presentation?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Mohammed Hossein Babaei. I am a master's student in transportation engineering at the University of Alberta under the supervision of Dr. Stephen Wong. And today I will be presenting our paper, Electric Vehicles in Emergencies and Evacuations, a review of resilience and future research directions. So just as an introduction, the growing adoption of EVs has brought a lot of challenges with it, especially in resilience during emergencies. So the extent to which outages affect EVs, the roadmap for how EVs are to escape dangers, and the best practices for EV users are as of yet relatively unclear. Despite challenges, large EV batteries can be used to provide power back to the grid in outages, and this means that EVs can fulfill a unique role in grid resiliency efforts during a disaster. With that being said, the benefits and challenges of EVs during emergencies have been relatively under-researched, and our study aims to provide an early understanding of these challenges and advantages through a systematic literature review. So our methodology included starting with a keyword search that had the keywords on the slide. This keyword string was run through 3 databases, Scopus, Taylor and Francis, and TRID. The publication window was also narrowed down to papers from 2010 to 2023. The preliminary search results yielded 333 results. After screening for relevancy and removing non-English articles, 60 articles remained, and a final search on Google Scholar added a single article, bringing us to 61 articles. Our research questions were: what are critical EV barriers and challenges in disasters and evacuations? What are the benefits and possible strategies for EVs in disasters and evacuations? And how can future research address gaps in knowledge while incorporating EV resilience in disasters? So to start with challenges, first and foremost, it's that EVs have a shorter range than combustion engine vehicles and take much longer to refuel than what we're used to. So this can significantly reduce EV usability during disasters and can lead to bottlenecks forming at charging stations as charging spots fill up and vehicles take upwards of 20 minutes to depart. Another issue is that charging infrastructure is just simply not available everywhere to support sustainable EV evacuations, and this is especially true in rural areas. Dense urban areas are often preferred by operators of EV charging stations over these rural sites that may be crucial to evacuations. And this can ultimately lead to unpreparedness for EVs in disasters. Studies also suggest that current grids are not prepared for even 20% adoption, and large-scale EV charging can burden electrical components. One component that's especially vulnerable is the transformer, but as the bullet point says, most areas in the world, or I would say some areas in the world, are not able to withstand even partial EV penetration, let alone wider adoption. EVs are also commonly left out of emergency planning and policy. This is despite the evident gaps in understanding on how to best use these vehicles in an emergency. And upfront costs for EV resiliency plans are often expensive. So an at-home battery or a fast charging station usually costs more than measures taken for combustion engine vehicles, which usually deal with the storage and transportation of gasoline. So in the benefits and strategies, I want to start off with the charging infrastructure and vehicle-to-grid technology, or V2G technology. So as batteries on wheels, EVs are very crucial in both before and after a disaster having occurred. Utilizing EV charge can help prevent an outage or help supply power to neighborhoods and communities after an outage has occurred by using EVs as mobile storage units. To use this, to have EVs fulfill this role, basically, you need V2G technology or vehicle-to-grid technology, which allows EVs to return power back to the grid. And this really is the backbone of EV resiliency measures, and it's the means by which charging EV batteries will be accessible in an emergency. To help expedite this, fast charging stations or level 3 chargers can be combined to help rapidly charge and discharge these vehicles. So as noted before, charging speeds are slower right now than refueling speeds with gasoline vehicles. And so speeding up this rate will be critical in ensuring EV resiliency plans during emergencies. And finally, to standardize charging ports is essential to maximize the integration and operational efficiency. In an emergency, it's very important to be able to access all EVs that we have. And so if we standardize ports across all of them, this is key to accessing all EVs and being fully prepared for an emergency. Another strategy is pre-disaster planning. What that might entail is maximizing stored energy in EVs before the advent of a disaster. So this can help us determine how long we have to go along with our measures. Although this does need to be done while considering the state of the grid and the charging demand leading up to a disaster, since at some levels of penetration, if all cars are charging once they hear about a disaster or an emergency, that itself can lead to an outage. EVs can also strategically be positioned at critical locations, such as hospitals or power plants, and other high priority locations that we can't afford to lose electricity at, in order to help mitigate outages. Another strategy we can use is microgrids. Microgrids are small grids that can manage their own electric supply and demand. Usually they have a central controller that manages the amount of use and the electricity available, and they're ideally run on renewable energy sources, though they could really draw from any power source. Integrating EVs into microgrids as a sort of power source, or at least a mobile storage unit, can help improve and manage demand while prolonging the supply of electricity we have in an emergency. So at the city or municipal level, it's unlikely that EVs alone will be able to meet power demand. So auxiliary power sources will be necessary to supplement or replace EV power. What these could be is vehicles that are equipped with diesel generators or batteries that can help transport and transmit power when EVs can't. Maybe an EV fleet in a city is busy with another task or with transportation. These vehicles have the mobility of EVs, which means they can be sent wherever they are needed, much like an EV. Another source could be photovoltaic generators or PV generators. These solar panels can be used in tandem with EVs to supply power to homes and neighborhoods. PV generators do provide extra power, but they also have the challenge of voltage fluctuations because of the fluctuating levels of sunlight, as is inherent with PVs. Another option would be electric buses or EBs. These buses have larger batteries than EVs and can be used to provide more power for longer durations. But it's very likely that most of these buses will be used for transportation during an emergency, and so few of them will have enough downtime to be able to discharge and provide power to the grid. And finally, there's also hybrid and hydrogen vehicles. These vehicles both generate electricity on board the vehicle, which is an advantage they have over conventional plug-in electric vehicles. But they struggle, one, from scarce refueling networks in the case of hydrogen vehicles, and also limited battery size in the case of hybrids. So to discuss the findings and the future directions, one thing we notice is that charging station congestion and long charge times is perhaps the biggest challenge facing EVs in the current day. And the amount of time it takes these vehicles to charge is really a hindrance. Future research can focus on technological advancements that can help mitigate this problem. Battery capacity and range are also a category where EVs currently fall behind combustion engine vehicles, and they have limited range due to the limited battery size. Battery size is critical for maintaining flow, especially during extended outages, and the performance of EVs in extended outages is also understudied. It's important to understand any further limitations that might come from longer periods of outage and how EVs perform in them. There's also the cost and accessibility of EV resilience measures. As discussed, EVs currently cost more than conventional gas-powered vehicles, and so do their resiliency measures. So EVs might require battery stations at home or fast chargers, which again cost more than the storage and transmission of gasoline, which is usually the way resiliency measures are, the things that resiliency measures for conventional vehicles include. There's also a focus on grid resilience. So we found that most research view EVs within the larger scale of grid resilience in either a microgrid or just the network as a whole. This usually leaves the resilience of EVs themselves understudied. And we think future research can pay more attention to the vulnerabilities of these vehicles themselves to ensure that they're able to be used as private vehicles, mobile power sources, or mobile storage units in any way that they're needed. The strategies for charging infrastructures that we have seen research currently focus on the placement of chargers. However, we think that the functionality of these chargers in a disaster, so the fact that how they remain operational and how much damage they can withstand, goes hand in hand with their strategic placement. And both these matters need to be considered to ensure safe and effective evacuations. And future research can focus on the resilience of charging infrastructure and not just the placement. There's also understudied user behavior. So research on EVs and disasters focuses on the theoretical use of power devices. And user behavior is usually mentioned to the extent of monetary incentives to incentivize EV users to sell power back to the grid or provide power to the grid again. It's critical to understand how EV users behave and what drives the decisions they make beyond monetary incentive to make sure that the theoretical plans we have align with the real life scenarios that might play out in a disaster. There's also, we also test sources by the phase of the disaster management cycle they fall in. So of the 61 articles, 15 were part of the mitigation phase and 25 were part of the preparedness phase. So these are the first two phases in disaster management, and they take place before the advent of a disaster. And we notice that more papers focus on mitigation and especially preparation compared to the other two steps, which are response and recovery. So it means more focus on theoretical and technical applications of measures that are not necessarily tested within simulated or real-life disaster scenarios. And this leaves room for future research to explore practical solutions that are applicable post-disaster and distribute focus across the entire cycle so that there is a robust and complete understanding of the disaster management phases and how EVs play a role in all of them. And just as a quick conclusion, so EVs face challenges such as long charging times, limited battery capacity, and sparse charging networks. Emergency planning and policy often leaves EVs out, and the cost of resiliency measures is prohibitively high. By focusing on all disaster phases and incorporating V2G technologies, EVs can be harnessed as mobile power sources to provide electricity to communities. And we think that future research can focus on identifying optimal locations for charging infrastructure, assessing driver behavior in disasters, addressing technological barriers, and testing the feasibility of V2G measures, especially in prolonged outages. And that is our presentation.
Okay,
These
thank you.
are...
Oh, continue, just while you wrap up. A long list of references. Yeah.
Yes.
So no one should ever think about electric vehicles as just something that's point A to point B ever again after your presentation. You raised a lot of interesting questions. And often you talked about, you alluded to resilience. And so, but you didn't talk specifically about resilience and what you meant by resilience and the measures and performance. So there's this idea of characterization as resilience as the robustness, the resourcefulness, the rapidity, recovery, etc. Do you want to speak to that for a minute? Because I think when you sort of made that nice link to the different phases of the disaster cycle, I think there's a nice way of integrating that into the different measures of resilience. But as you were talking, it was hard for me to think through it. But have you thought about that at all?
Yeah, I think if I understand your question correctly, I think resilience, I would frame it as being able to use your vehicle, firstly, as it's intended to be used, and also secondly, maybe beyond what conventional vehicles today are being used for. So I think for now, mostly EV resilience research is trying to see how we can bring EVs up to the same level of, I guess, quote unquote, resilience that combustion engine vehicles have, and the same level of comfort that we have. Because, for example, in current days, in evacuations, you might have heard a lot of electric vehicles are just being stranded and abandoned. That's just one example of how EVs are just not being able to, I guess, keep up with current day combustion engine vehicles. So I think currently research is trying to see how we can make EVs just as usable and just as I guess I can't use any word other than resilient, as a combustion engine vehicles, and then beyond that, how you can use EVs in cases where you can't use combustion engine vehicles. And these two things are sort of progressing at the same time.
I think I would also argue that if EVs are more resilient in disasters, they're going to be more resilient in also day-to-day operation as well. So it should be a win-win for everyone.
That's right.
So Julia just put a note in the chat. Thank you for the presentation. And she works for an international organization. And she's asking, do you have insights from those reviewed papers on the needed preconditions to enable V2G in the case of a disaster? And what can EV best be used for in the case in disasters, the power, household, others? So any insights?
Yeah,
Julia,
that's a
you for
good
the
question. Yeah, I think our research didn't specifically go into how V2G itself would be implemented, especially in terms of disasters. There's not too much research on this topic out yet. But from what I gathered from our research, I think the best use case for EVs might just be within the scope of just a house, or maybe at most a neighborhood or a street, because it also ties into, it gets more complex when you try to collectivize in how people are willing to share their own personal EV and their charge. If you ask someone, are you willing to, for example, provide put your car, I guess, and its charge up for like a collective system that distributes all the power in a neighborhood, you might not be willing to do so because you would rather have your car power your home. So it gets a little bit tricky. So I think starting off and just considering the capacity of EV batteries, it might be more feasible to power a house or just a couple of houses more so than a collective. But
yeah,
yes.
I think that's a good example, because there's also the example of people using their cars to charge their cell phones in post-disaster situations, and not willing to, sometimes being very willing to share it with their neighbors, in other cases not being willing to share it with their neighbors.
Yes, that's right.
Anyway, interesting. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. I hope that this gets everyone thinking. Thanks for turning on your camera. Nice to actually see your face. And I'd like to move to the last presentation, which is an empirical analysis of electric vehicle charging patterns. And Yi Li is going to make this presentation. Okay. I think unmuted and perhaps camera on.
Can you see
Okay, we can see you, and we're seeing your presentation in presenter mode. So go up to the top and change it from the presenter mode. So that second. So what we see is your notes and everything. So.
Okay. So can I? Okay. Yeah. Can I use the print mode?
That's perfect. We're seeing just the presentation now. So.
Okay.
So thank you. Please go ahead, and if you could turn your camera on, that would be great. It's nice to see your face. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry. 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 Can I use is the present mode now? Is this a present mode now?
Professor Su, you are mute. You are muting yourself.
Oh, thank you. We're seeing your notes.
Oh,
so,
you're seeing the notes. So I just
yes. Now that's the right one. Thank you.
Okay. My name is Julie, and I'm a PhD student of transportation engineering, and it's my 4th year. And today's my topic is empirical analysis of electrical vehicles of charging patterns. So here is the outline of my presentation. The figure plots a timetable for banning the sale of fuel cars by countries, as we can see. So the Norway is a forefront country that will adopt 100% of zero emission vehicles by 2025. As we can see, more countries just want to ban the sale of the fuel cars. The advantage of electric cars is that it can integrate more intelligent equipment such as the autonomous equipment something. So as we can see, more and more electric vehicle will be adopted as they have these advantages. So and also it can help facilitate to understand the current EV user and behaviors. We can facilitate the charging, the layout of the charging infrastructure. Also, we can inform the policy design, such we can have the vehicle plate policy, or we can design the tax exemption for electric vehicles. Also, we can help improve the electric vehicle user experience. Also, as a former presenter, we can have some environmental benefits. We can coordinate EV charging with power grid. Also, we can have the vehicle to grid to facilitate better power supply. So many previous studies have relatively small sample size, often fewer than 1,000 electric vehicles, and also the state of charge of batteries is frequently missing in the data. Also, some comparative studies on behavior of battery electric vehicles and plug-in hybrid electric vehicles are relatively scarce. So some studies just have the battery electric vehicles or just have the plug-in electric vehicles. So the comparative studies is scarce. And there are few investigations into the special characteristics of charging compared to the temporal of charging session. So our data source is from the Shanghai Electric Vehicle Public Data Collecting. Shanghai is one of the most popular, have the most amount of the EV cars in the world. I think it is a city, the biggest city. And Shanghai Electric Vehicle Public Data Collecting Monitoring Research Center collect data includes all passenger and commercial electric vehicles sold and registered in Shanghai since 2015, and totaling over about 300,000 electric vehicles. So they record about 10 seconds EV records and send them to the EV center. The data encompasses about 108 companies and 125 brands and about 1,000 models. So this is our data. We have about 6,000 PHEVs and about 4,000 BEVs, and there are variety of the battery capacities. And for every data entry, we have 3 types: the driving, parking, or charging. And for every type of event, we have the starting, ending event time. It's from the 2020 May 1st to the 2021 May 29th. And also the starting ending coordinates of the events. It's mainly encompassed in territorial mainland Shanghai, and all the total mileage, starting and total mileage, so we can calculate the distance they traveled. And the starting and ending SOC from 0 to 100%. Here is the distribution of EV battery. We mainly have the 9.1 PHEV or the 18 and 18.5 PHEV. Also for BEV, we mainly have the 35 and 48.3 kilowatts hour. So we have about like 5 million and to 6 million driving session for both BEV and PHEV, and 1.5 million charging session for BEV, and also 0.9 charging session for PHEV. Also, we have another charging station data. We divided Shanghai into over 10,000 Hextron grid and request charging station information from map API. Here is the results. We can see the distribution of the number of station per grid. Besides, we can identify the EV home can be inferred from its most frequent parked grid, hexagon grid at late night. We can infer the home. About 30% of identified home are found inside the outer ring road for the BEV and PHEV, which is regarded as the downtown area of Shanghai. As such data, we such a lot of data. We first use a cluster to group the different kind of the electric vehicles. We just use the usage intensity. As we can see, here is the daily vehicle traveled distribution. We can see 2 peaks for just BEV and PHEV. So we separate them into 2 groups for both BEV and PHEV. And for group S, means short daily DVKT. It has lower mean DVKT and standard deviation for DVKT. And also we have group L, which have a lot much more average DVKT and standard deviation for DVKT. So we just separate for SBEV, SBEV, LBEV, SPHEV, LB, and PHEV. So for estimate driving range, since the battery degradation is different and their energy consumption rate is different, considering their trip is totally different and their road condition is different. So we estimate the driving range by estimating the energy consumption rate for 11 months. We just calculate the energy consumption rate, which is the kilowatts hour per kilometers, and we use the battery capacity divided by the average ECR. We can see the estimate driving range, and also here is the DVKT. So as we can see for SBEV, we can clearly see the linear relationship with DVKT versus estimate driving range. It means that for SBEV, it means that the DVKT represents the driving needs for the SBEV, and the estimate driving range is linearly increase with the DVKT. So they tend to buy the larger battery size or estimate driving range as their driving needs increase. But for LBEV, the condition is totally different. For LBEV, we can see this is flat. So for DVKT increase, the estimate driving range remains constant. So we think that for LBEV, they are most commercial vehicles. So they have limited budget. They cannot buy larger battery vehicles. So they tend to charging to combat with range anxiety. So they tend to charging for more driving range. And also we study the remaining driving range before charging. Surprisingly, we see that for every group of the vehicles, they tend to remain 75 to 100 kilometers before they are charging. So we think that it is because it is a psychological threshold in Shanghai. So they tend to remain 70 kilometer to 100 kilometer to recharge their batteries for different groups. So whether this distance is different for different cities, for different groups, it is worth to study further. So for basic charging characteristics, we need to answer 3 questions. It is charging types. Is fast charging or slow charging? And it means how to charge, or when to charge, the temporal distribution of the charging, and where to charge, the geographic distribution of the charging. So for charging types, we have the following charging types according to China China national standard. We can see we have the household charging equipment. It is a portable charging equipment with single phase 220 voltage alternating current, have rated power of approximately 3 kilowatts. Also, we have dedicated charging equipment. It's usually the charging pulse. So use 2020 voltage AC for charging with power rating around 80 kilowatts. Also, we have the commercial fast charging. Fast charging, we have two kinds. The three-phase AC has rated power of approximately 7 to 27 kilowatts, or direct current charging equipment have rated power of ranging from 16 to 2050 kilowatts. Here is a distribution of our data, the charging power distribution of our data. As we can see, for PHEV, it has only one peak around the 7 kilowatts, so it corresponds to the portable charging equipment. And also for BEV, we have two peaks, and it is around the 3 kilowatts, also around the 25 kilowatts. Also, we have studied that after the initial charging SOC is larger than 80%, it experiences a charging power decrease. So it's a side. So the charging power is not linearly. After the 8% initial SOC, the charging power will decrease a lot. So we overall 69% of SBEV charging events are identified as slow charging, while 87% of LBEV charging events are fast charging. We speculate that commercial vehicles such as ride-hailing cars experience opportunity cost when charging, whereas private car owners prioritize convenience and prefer slow charging overnight at home. Here is the temporal distribution. As for the temporal distribution, it answers when to charge. So we have two peaks for SBEV and SPHEV. This is a small charging peak after around 8 a.m. So we assume that this is a private car. When they get to the company, they arrived and they charge at this time. And also we have two prominent peak at night. This is 10 p.m. and 12 p.m. for private car. This is more likely to the small charger that adapt to the Shanghai Valley price. So Shanghai have a peak price, peak electricity price, and valley electricity price. And after 10 p.m. The small charger will activate autonomously. So they begin to charge after 10 p.m. And also there are small charging and peak around 12 p.m. 12 a.m. And for LPHEV and LBEV, the situation is totally different. So we can see a peak around the lunchtime. So for commercial vehicles like the DD ride sourcing vehicle, they tend to charge around lunchtime, and also they have a lot they have more charging events around 12 p.m. And it is it can be that they stay too late. They operate their vehicles too late around 12 p.m. So we also estimate the impact of converting all the current vehicle to electric vehicle and the impact to the power grid. So each SEBEV adds approximately 0.86 kilowatt to grid load during peak times, while each LBEV adds about 2.9 kilowatts. So converting all private cars and taxis to BEV will introduce a new load of approximately 3 gigawatts to the grid, representing a 10 to 15% increase in Shanghai current load. As for the spatial distribution, we can see the LBEV tends to charge around the downtown area. So they tend to operate at the downtown area. And the fast charging facility are more likely in the downtown area. So they just operate in the downtown area and charge on the downtown area. And for LPHEV, SPHEV, and SBEV, they prefer to charge at around. They prefer to charge home charging, and they prefer the convenience rather than the fast charging. And also, we study the influence of energy consumption efficiency. So we think that the energy efficiency provided by the battery of electric vehicle can significantly influence user driving and charging behavior. Many studies have shown that the temperature and speed greatly impact the energy efficiency of electric vehicle. So we explore the seasonal effect affecting charging behavior. Here is a plot for the energy consumption rate, which is kilowatts per hour, kilometers versus the speed, kilometer per hour. As we can see, as the speed from 0 to 20, the ECR decrease, and also they stabilized around 20, and also they after 6 kilometer per hour, the ECR increases. And for the different color, it represents different battery capacities. As we can see, if you have a more battery capacity, the ECR will definitely beyond the other groups. And also here is the ECR and the temperature. As we can see, if you from the negative 10 degrees Celsius to the 20 degree, it will decrease the ECR, and also after the 20 degree, it will increase the ECR. So we in this table, we show that the monthly changes of the energy consumption rate and their driving frequency and charging frequency, their daily usage, and their charging patterns, mainly about the proportion of slow charging events. It means slow charging rate, the proportion of slow charging event. So compared to the May, the average energy consumption rate in January increased by the 36.4%. This increase in ECR leads to more frequent charging activity and a great preference for fast charging, likely due to the reduced driving range, especially for LBEVs. So in winter, the slow charging rate for SBEV remains at a high level. It's mainly because that the spring, the winter is the Spring Festival for Chinese, so they tend to go home during the holiday. As for the PHEV, the situation is totally different. For PHEV, it has two different systems. One is the intercombustion systems engine, and another is electric motor system. So the PHEV will first have the charge depleting mode. In this mode, they just use it is propelled mainly by the electricity. And also, when the battery decrease at a certain level, such as 20% SOC, it will switch to the charging sustaining mode. In this mode, it will it's mainly propelled by the gasolines. Here, to illustrate, we plot the full PHEV as the time goes, the initial and SOC changes. We can see this is definitely the CS mode, and this is a CD mode. So we can see for different vehicles, they use they charge very differently. For this vehicle, they seldom charges, but for this vehicle, it charges regularly. So there is one factor that measures to the extent which PHEV use electricity versus gasolines. If a PHEV operates entirely on gasoline, its UF is 0, similar to a traditional fuel vehicle. If it operates entirely on electricity, its UF is 1, as akin to the BEV. So for PHEV, UF is calculated as the distance driven in charging depleting mode divided by the total distance driven, serve as an indicator of whether PHEV behave more likely a gasoline vehicle or an electric vehicle. So the current prevalent standard is the SAE standard. This standard assumes the vehicle starts the day fully charged and is recharged only after the last trip of the day. For example, a PHEV with 40 kilometer electric range that drives an average of 30 kilometer per day would have a UF of 1. If it drives an average of 50 kilometer per day, the UF would be 0.8. So it's definitely the current standard definitely overestimates to the extent to which PHEV use electricity. Like this vehicle, it seldom charges it seldom charges. So we develop a data-driven UF evaluation method. So let D and DCD represent the total driving distance of PHEV and the distance powered by the city mode, respectively. So this is a total distance and this is a distance supported by the city mode. So UF equals DCD divided by the D, where DCD is difficult to measure. So we can use the energy equation and the energy consumption rate of the electricity times the total distance equals energy consumption rate in CD mode times the DCD, where the ECR and ECR-CD represent net energy consumption rate of the battery over the entire vehicle mileage and the net energy consumption rate in CD mode respectively. So UF can be derived as ECR divided by the ECR-CD. ECR can be obtained from the sum of the net changes in battery level of all trips. ECR-CD can be estimated from the trips that can be clearly identified being a CD mode. So in this way, we can calculate the UF with our proposed method. Also, we use the reference to UF, mainly e.g. the SAE method. So the SAE method significantly overestimate the actual battery usage of PHEV, especially for SPHEV. And generally, LPHEV have lower UF than SPHEV due to their longer DVKT. And larger battery size support longer travel distance powered by the battery, resulting in higher UF. And specifically for LPHEV with 9.1 kilowatt battery, a UF of 0.1 means that 90% of its travel distance is powered by gasolines. So in conclusion, we found that the users tend to consider a similar driving range when deciding to start charge, and a similar SOC percentage when deciding to disconnect from the charger. And overall, 69% of charging session for SPEV is identified as slow charging, while 87% of session for LBEV involve fast charging. And in Shanghai, the ideal driving speed to minimize ECI is approximately 40 km per hour, and the ideal temperature is 23 degrees Celsius. And converting all the existing all private and commercial gasoline vehicle in Shanghai to BEV would require an additional 10 to 15% of the city current power supply. And also the current method significantly overestimate the actual battery usage of PEV, especially for the SPHE. So if you are interested in our research, here is a full paper published in Transportation Research Part D. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, an interesting data set with some interesting insights. There was actually a question in the chat from Professor Yamamoto, and he said that 50 to 100 kilometers of remaining driving range seem rather large. Do you think that was related to the density of charging locations?
Yeah, I think this definitely related to the charging facility. And I think also the Shanghai is large, so they tend to store more charging, more batteries to to combat with the fluctuation in their travel needs. So for different city, I think the value is different, I think.
Okay, so exactly. So you can sort of break it down in these different ways. Is it likely that you get access to a similar data set in the future to see how it changes over time? Because this with data was from a couple of years ago now.
Yeah. I think it's interesting research question. Yeah. As the charging convenience or we can see the value is different because the battery here in our data set is relatively small. For now, in Shanghai, the battery is at least 50 kilowatts hour, but our is at most 50 kilowatts hour. So definitely the situation is totally different now, I think.
Right. So some interesting insights. Well, thank you. Appreciate it. We've had 5 interesting presentations, 4 of them around different aspects of electric vehicles, 1 around the bus routing design, express service and frequency, around this general theme of transportation in the future and sustainability. Yigang has put up the sessions following in the chat, so please take a look at that. The next session is actually Intelligent Transportation Systems Analysis and Technology, which is due to start in all of 5 minutes. Appreciate everyone sitting in on this. I think everyone should get up and stretch